And so what I think is interesting is that my struggles with, depression and suicide ideation and, being a victim of assault, those have all happened side by side with my travel. And so a lot of times we get this, travel through trauma. Oh, you had trauma, or you're going to travel to heal yourself through it. I was experiencing both at the same time. So now I'm using it as, motivation to keep going. I'm using it as something to look forward to. I'm using it oftentimes as a distraction. I'm using it as a way to continue the skills that I've learned in therapy. I'm using it as a way to learn new skills. I think for me, and I was thinking about this, Ashraf, travel has been the best way for me to get out of my own head. Because when you deal with mental health struggles, you're just in your head and it just feels like a dark rain cloud. And for me to travel, I get out of my head and I physically and mentally go somewhere new.
Welcome to the Travel Through Trauma podcast, where we dive into personal stories of resilience, transformation, and healing through the lens of travel. I'm your host, Ashraf Farasati, CEO and founder of Travel Through Trauma, a nonprofit dedicated to helping survivors break free from generational trauma and reclaim their lives through the empowering experience of solo international travel. In each episode, we'll hear from incredible individuals who have navigated personal challenges, fought through adversity, and found healing in places where they never expected. Whether you're someone searching for your own path to recovery or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is for you. So buckle up as we explore how travel can heal the soul, challenge the mind, and open doors to new beginnings. Let's embark on this journey together. Welcome, Katerina, to the Travel Through Trauma podcast. You are one of our newest members to the Travel Through Trauma team. We're so lucky to have you. I'm
really excited to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about your story because we met relatively recently and I feel like we clicked very quickly, but
Yeah.
I don't know that much about you, and I'm dying to learn more about your
I found you in a
upbringing,
Google
your
search.
journey. I know, right? Thank you, SEOs.
I know, seriously. But I mean, it's been a short time, but I feel like we have gotten to know each other, and I feel like we've done some really good work already.
Agreed.
So I'm excited to continue doing our work, but also getting to know each other and doing things like this.
Exactly. Well, tell me a little bit more about where you grew up, how you grew up, maybe some of the self-limiting beliefs that you grew up with.
I was very, very lucky. I grew up in a very loving, privileged household, honestly. We were from South Florida. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. We lived by the beach. We was the Sunshine State, right? And so we were always outside. I was barefoot for most of my life until I was 18, honestly. And we kind of split our time between the South Florida area and the islands of the Florida Keys. It was a wonderful time. I think about my childhood and I think wow, I was really lucky. It was before the iPad kids came along. And so I wasn't an iPad kid. We were outside, we were playing catch, we were doing all those things, we were on the boat. It was really, really lovely. And I feel like during that time, I got my first foray into traveling. Traveling was really big for my parents. They had always encouraged us to travel from a young age because the time that they took between getting married and having children, they spent a lot of that time traveling. And so it was something that they had instilled into us. And so we as a family actually were able to travel to a few different places, Bermuda, but specifically Spain. So we as Cubans have Spanish heritage. So, this is where our family is from. And so we went 3 or 4 times as a family, which I feel so grateful for. It was a great place. I'm learning Spanish because my mom speaks Spanish and we're in Spain and we're having all this great food. And I remember I didn't want to eat anything other than chicken and bread. I was, 8 years old and I didn't know what paella was. But I feel like that really introduced me and I think laid the groundwork for all of the travel we're going to be talking about today. So really great family, and I thank my parents for that every day.
That's amazing. I love to hear it. Did your parents both immigrate from Cuba, or
Just
are they
my mom.
Okay.
Just
That's
my
beautiful.
mom.
So they must have met in the States then.
They met in Miami. They met in college. Yeah, it's a funny story. And so his family, ultimately when we were growing up, they were 1 hour north. My mom's family was 1 hour south in Miami. And so we met in the middle. And it was this, kind of beautiful bicultural experience of classic American values, whatever you want to call them. And then the craziness of Miami, going down for baptisms and all these different parties and speaking Spanish. And It was very interesting to be in the middle, physically and metaphorically, of those two cultures.
That's so cool. I love
Yeah.
that. And the fact that you are a fluent Spanish speaker because of it is amazing.
I know, I need to practice. I got to go on the trip to Costa Rica with our participants.
Yeah. So how did travel lead you to make certain life decisions like your career choice or what you studied in school? Because I want to understand like how that influenced you.
It really did. I didn't, yeah, that's a great question. I think I went to college and I was just like hell bent on being a doctor. And specifically, I had in my mind Doctors Without Borders. And so, you hear this, you read the book when you're 15, 16, and you think to yourself, I'm smart, I'm a gifted child, I can get the A's in all the classes, I'm going to do this. And it was like a really, what I thought was a noble calling, with a lot of religious undertones, I think. And so I went to college and I did the whole thing. I did the pre-med track and I had an opportunity to travel abroad during my junior year of college. And so I went to Copenhagen, Denmark, which is my favorite place in the world. And I was actually there for 6 months studying health systems. So what is this democratic socialist country? What does their healthcare system look like? And then comparing that to the United States, obviously from my own experience, but also to that of Germany and to Poland. And so I got to travel all those different places. And then I also got to travel quite a bit while I was over there, right? I'm living there, you have such easy access. And so I was having this coursework in healthcare, and I was also experiencing travel. And so I felt more vindicated. And yeah, I'm going to try and find a way to marry these two things. And so, here comes a gap year. I applied to medical school. I'm a tour guide in Greece and Italy. That was my job during my gap year. Figured I needed to fill my time somehow. And I ultimately don't end up going to medical school. I don't know, something changed within me. And I thought to myself, well, the whole Doctors Without Borders thing, the whole, community minded physician thing. At this time, everyone was saying you needed to get a master's of public health. And so I ended up going to the number one public school of public health, UNC Chapel Hill, and specifically to their new global health program. So it's like global health. Here we are, global health, travel, and health. And my world was rocked in the sense of it broke down, I think, a lot of the assumptions I had about travel, to be honest with you. Not even just travel, but of cultures around the world, a white savior complex, localization, cultural humility, which I still carry with me to this day during my travels. And so kind of switching from that, I don't know, sweeping in and helping you from a medical standpoint, I focus more on health technologies. And then I got two jobs in that, and that's where I am today. So
So
now I do
what
health technologies.
what sparked that very important moment where you understood the cultural awareness aspect and integrating yourself more in that world?
Yeah, I think you mean like cultural humility. We had an actual class called Cultural Humility, and it was a great class. And I think a lot of us in a global health academic program, you're well traveled. A lot of these people did Fulbrights or they did Peace Corps or different things like that. And so you come in with an idea of how you're going to help people while also still fostering your mind and your body and your spirit through travel. And you think it's going to be a double whammy. And then you kind of learn through these discussions how sometimes that can be really harmful, how that can be harmful to the communities you think you're helping, how that can be harmful in perpetuating stereotypes of different cultures or different places. And so the biggest takeaway was like, they shouldn't need you. If you're going to be doing anything, you need to be building capacity, and you're not there to save other people. Like me, as a woman from the United States of America, I'm not going to be dropped down into a country and save you. And I think that disassembling all those identities that I had had from going to Christian school or from being privileged, I can help you, I'm going to save you, that was huge. And so I think that change from a I'm going to make a difference for you focus to I want to know about you focus has really changed the way that I travel as a whole, to be honest with you.
That's rich. I don't think we talk about that enough, especially in the United States when it comes to volunteer work. It is
Oh
such
my
a
gosh.
noble thing to do to volunteer, for example, for Habitat for Humanity, which is a very well known organization, but and not to like harp on them, but they're a perfect example of how they have built homes in other countries or other areas and the homes were not equipped to handle whatever environment or whatever the community's needs were. And it would fail, and it would put more time and more labor intensive work from the community to go fix it than to build it from scratch. And I think that's something we don't recognize. We have this white savior complex in America,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, and
Yeah.
that's not our role in this world. Our role
No,
is
and
to
my first
understand each
job,
other.
yeah, my first job really continued to debunk that. It was digital health technologies, but it was in the international development space. So here I am, I'm traveling to Ethiopia, to Togo, to Cote d'Ivoire, to, Kenya, to Burundi, and I'm having all these conversations in my own head again of what's going to happen when we're no longer funding this project? And what's going to happen when we, run out of funding? What's going to happen when, we get redirected or this is no longer a priority for the government? It's just interesting. But like I said, it like definitely shifted. I think traveling for work and traveling for my own personal enrichment, they then informed each other. I think that what I was learning from work about the nitty gritty inner workings of sometimes ministries of health in different places or other people who live there and going to people's houses as like a welcome and feeling so enriched by their presence and the way that they've taken me in because I am here working with them. I think that that desire to connect with people has definitely transferred into my tourism as well.
How do you utilize those skills in your personal travels? How do you connect with individuals when it has no motive, like from your work, to do it?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I love planning trips. I feel like half the fun for me is planning because I'm such a big fan of research in the sense that I want to know all of the information. I want to know all of the options that I have that day. I want to know all the things that like this city is famous for. And I think I've implemented in the research phase by trying to find things to do like, working with international development that are going to do no harm. So finding more like locally led excursions or locally led experiences that are doing well. And so like integrating that into my research of, everybody wants to go to this place, but is that actually causing harm to that community? Like, did they, save paradise and put up a parking lot for that attraction? And so trying to do more research on the front end. And then also while they're just respecting the culture as much as you can, right? If you can learn a few words in Amharic when you're going to Ethiopia, it makes all the difference. And I think that engaging with the culture while you're there is super important. Try the escargot. Say hi, right? Try to speak Spanish when you're in Spain. Go to like more educational, cultural experiences as well. So that's how I try.
Exactly, because you're not really traveling if you're just going to a five-star resort, staying on the beach the whole time. You're not experiencing anything about that country. In fact, I think it's not fair to even say you went there when
That's so
that's all you
funny.
experience.
I
And I
think that
completely agree with you that you need to learn a few phrases, just be able to connect with people in their own language, even if it's just one, two words, but they feel so excited to see someone who doesn't look like them, who's putting an effort to get to know their history, their food, their culture. Yeah.
yeah, we call that the difference between vacationing and traveling.
Yeah, exactly. I am not a vacationer at all.
Makes sense. And I will say, like, leading into kind of our discussion about travel through trauma, like, traveling is formative. Vacation is restful. I think traveling can be super formative, and it's challenging, and that's the way that it's supposed to be.
It's very well said. And I think
Yeah.
people misinterpret the purpose, I think, behind backpacking for that reason. And I think just to go back to the kind of harm that we can also induce when we travel, one perfect example that comes to mind, I'm sure you have many more examples, is elephant riding in Thailand. It's such a
Yes.
harmful practice for the animals themselves. And no matter
Yeah.
what the tour guides will say about how humanely they're being treated, just the fact that they're having to carry people on their back and go on multiple walks a day is more than their bodies can handle. And you can see scars from being chained. So it's about truly, like you said, doing your research to understand if your impact there is going to be positive or negative. And I think in a lot of cases, economically, it can be very positive, but who you're contributing it to is going to be just as important to look into. So do you have any tips on that? Like, what do you
Mm.
look for when you're researching?
I think that's a perfect example because I did backpack Thailand with my best friend for 3 weeks, and I looked extensively into an elephant camp trying to find one that was more rehabilitation oriented that we did not ride elephants, that, making sure that us even being in their vicinity, making sure that there were certain like hygienic standards so that we're not getting elephants sick, things like that. And so I definitely engaged in that. My research is a perfect example. I did that. I think, I mean, I just utilize all of the information that's given to me. I feel like I read a like litany of resources, whether it be Condé Nast or Reddit. I feel like you just cover the whole gamut. And then sometimes like local media as well. I think we have fallen into this period of time, it's called like Instagram travel, where everybody wants to go to the very specific place that this photo was taken, and everybody takes their photo at this place, and then you show up there and there's a line of 50 people. And I get that, it's beautiful, and I have done that. But I think what I struggle with sometimes, what I think some other people are struggling with, is like you go somewhere for a photo. And I struggle with that because my main hobby is travel photography. And like I want to take photos and I want to have memories, but for example, like not just going somewhere for the photo, because I have heard of stories where like that does impact communities. Like if you have a certain notable monument or something like this, or just an area that had not been trodden before, that now people are picking up on social media, on the internet, and now that community is at risk because all of these people are coming in. So I don't know. It's hard to like give an exact way to do your research.
Yeah. And it's hard to even consider that to be all harmful because there are so many places on the map that nobody even knew about. And because of social media, we're having a lot more global awareness of
I'd
different
agree.
countries, islands, cultures, languages. And I think it's beautiful. In fact, it has personally really destigmatized Iran, in my opinion, because and other Middle Eastern countries that have had a really bad rap for years, but now we can see through social media what the reality is, that the media is not going to ever show you.
No, that's a
And I
really
think
good
there's a lot
point.
of benefit to that. But like you said, a lot of communities cannot handle the influx of tourists, especially when they come for something, in my opinion, not to be judgmental, but as superficial as just seeing a landmark. And I think it can have its own impact. And I really challenge people to like ask themselves why this landmark matters to them. Are
Yeah.
they learning something about the history of the architecture, or, how it served the community in that time
Yeah, it's
frame?
interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough topic because we're in a really modern age. And I think you and I both started traveling before Instagram ever made it popular.
Yeah.
I was 2000s basically, we're millennials. So we
I
were
think
original
even
backpackers.
I think even the New Yorker, I don't know if it was the New York Times, I think it was the New Yorker did a whole article on the case to not travel. And so it's a
Mm,
point of discourse right now. And I think it's interesting. And I think, for something like us, we build an organization off of the benefits of traveling and what it
yeah.
can do for our mental health and things like that. And so it's just an interesting conversation. And I think you and I talk about it a lot in the sense of like traveling for the correct reasons or doing anything for the correct reasons for that matter. And like, what are you getting out of the travel? And, when we talk about travel through trauma, we're getting a lot of healing through it. We're, addressing a lot of those self limitations that you mentioned. And so I have experienced a lot of that as well, which has been a major, if not the most major part of my traveling as a whole, has been kind of that healing, which is why I found you.
And that's the perfect segue because I really want to shift into understanding what aspects of yourself you did address and heal through
Yeah.
travel. What were some of the things that have come up over the years for you, maybe even experiences?
Yeah, I think that, I didn't have any sort of, childhood trauma and then was wrestling through it. And then when I got older, I found traveling and used that as a treatment. That was kind of not it, as many things in the world. It was not that linear. I had experienced, and I still do experience, like extreme mental health issues and struggles. And I have really since college. And so what I think is interesting is that my struggles with depression and suicide ideation and being a victim of assault, those have all happened side by side with my travel. And so a lot of times we get this travel through trauma, oh, you had trauma, or you're going to travel to heal yourself through it. I was experiencing both at the same time. So now I'm using it as, motivation to keep going. I'm using it as something to look forward to. I'm using it oftentimes as a distraction. I'm using it as a way to continue the skills that I've learned in therapy. I'm using it as a way to learn new skills. I think for me, and I was thinking about this, Ashraf, travel has been the best way for me to get out of my own head. Because when you deal with mental health struggles, you're just in your head and it just feels like a dark rain cloud. And for me to travel, I get out of my head and I physically and mentally go somewhere new. And I get to experience different things and I get to, experience places like if I was a little kid again, when you have your eyes really big and you have a sense of wonder and awe. And I have found that so incredibly healing as somebody who struggles with like chronic depression and anxiety, to the point of like, talking about a little bit of my past and like my past and my trauma, to the point of being like hospitalized. And that comes with its own stigma. It comes with its own kind of like lifelong prognosis of, am I going to be struggling this forever? Well, if I'm going to be struggling with mental health struggles forever, then I'd love to travel forever too. Because yeah, I think there are many things I love about travel. Like I said, getting out of my own head, but also giving me a purpose. And that doesn't need to necessarily be a purpose for somebody else. I think that it gives me a purpose in the sense of I find joy in the researching. I find joy in the planning. I find joy in sharing travel with other people. And so when I was a tour guide in Greece and Italy, I'm taking people and I'm showing them the sites for the first time and they're having the wide-eyed awe on their face. And that brings me joy. And so I'm finding healing in different ways, both, just being able to celebrate my agency and my autonomy when I solo travel, to be able, what do I want to do today? And healing in that way of taking up space, which like we hear our therapists say, right? You can take up space. And so I take up the space when I solo travel. I take up all the space because it's me. And I've like really learned how to enjoy my own company, which I think has been immensely beneficial for when things do go sour, when you don't feel well. You can trust in yourself and trusting in yourself to make decisions. When you're solo traveling, a lot of times it's not a walk in the park. Sometimes you have to make some tough decisions. Sometimes scary things happen, especially as a woman traveling the world. And so feeling that trust in yourself that I'm going to make the decision and I'm going to handle this. I think I have taken all of those skills and I've brought them home and utilized them. And so my healing has been very active and tangible and skills focused. And that's all been learned through travel.
I love that. And I resonate with you completely because I
Yeah.
also struggle with chronic depression and generalized anxiety and other things, OCD and stuff like that. And travel just really does help me see my own life with a new perspective and get
Mm-hmm.
out of my own head and experience the world, like you said, with doe eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I come home after traveling somewhere else, I'm seeing my own city with a new
Mm-hmm.
sense of wonder. And I'm just in
Mm-hmm.
awe and in love with my own city all over again and the
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle that I have. And I think we're so lucky to be able to come back to a home where we love it. But I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to know a little bit more about, like, you've been traveling all your life, but at what
Mm-hmm.
point was it that you came to recognize it as a tool for your mental health when you were in the depths of your suicidal ideations or some of the traumatizing experiences, like you mentioned, the assaults that might have happened in your past?
Yeah.
Like, how did those difficult moments actually lead you to that discovery?
Yeah, I think like I said, they were happening at the same time. And so like when did I decide, oh, this is useful? I think, that first long bout of living in a different country when I was studying abroad, I think I was having a real hard time in college, to be honest with you. And I went there and I had the time of my life. And I remember doing a lot of reflection. It's like, why am I having the time of my life? Is it because the drinking age is 18? Is it because like I have new friends? Is it because I have this independence? Is it because of a different country? And I think just the act of, like we said, like being somewhere new and experiencing things and employing all these tools, I noticed a difference even in that 6 months in Copenhagen, where you're struggling on your home turf, you're going to college, you're doing all the things that you quote unquote should do, and one of the supposedly happiest times of your life. And with the mental health struggles, like this is not the happiest time of my life. when you're on campus. And then I went to Copenhagen and I was just having an absolute ball. And I realized, like, wait, this is making me feel a lot better. What is it that's making me feel a lot better? And I had some intense reverse culture shock when I got home. And I don't think that's talked about enough with study abroad. When you're having, like, when you're experiencing healing and then you come back and you're dropped back into America or any place really. And so I noticed a huge difference, going from America to there, feeling a little bit healing, and then coming back to America and being like, oh, I feel much worse. So I started to notice kind of maybe that pattern or that causation or correlation, I should say. And then I think during that gap year after college, where I was having a real hard time, and like you said, like that was the time of the assault, like having the tour guide job and being able to actually put myself to work technically, but also like focusing on something and looking forward to a trip. I feel like, we talk about trauma responses, and a lot of times it's like fight, flight, or freeze. I feel like I was able to try to keep going as much as I could because I was looking forward to something. So using it as a tool, as a job, but using it as, again, like a tool to keep going in a very difficult year. And so I feel like both of those were, I don't know, pretty blatant examples of using travel while that trauma was happening that was noticeable.
Yeah. Was it during your time in Copenhagen when you really befriended yourself and started to see that you love your own company?
Yes, because that's when I started solo traveling. Because, that's why we love the EU. It's easy access to a lot of different places. I think I solo traveled to 10 or 12 countries while I was in Copenhagen. I took full advantage. Like, thank you so much to my program. Thank you so much for my parents for paying for it. But I took full advantage, and I remember going on my first solo trip. I think it was to Paris, honestly. And it was a weekend, I'm going to start small. And I remember being so nervous, but also so enthralled. Like, I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to go to a different country. I am going to do whatever I want. I'm going to eat in a restaurant by myself. I'm going to go to the Louvre. I'm going to do these things. And that solo travel that started there, I think it was Paris for the first time and then happened 10 times. And then that's happened a multitude of times since then. It's still my favorite way to travel. Don't
I
tell my
love
partner. Don't
it.
tell my friends. It's still my
Yeah.
favorite way to travel.
It's my partner knows it's my favorite way to travel. I put that disclaimer on our second date. I said, I'm going to travel solo. And if you have a problem with it, we're not going to go to date
We'll just
3.
end this date.
Yeah. And honestly,
Yeah.
it's another thing we have in common. Paris was also my first solo international
Makes
trip. And
sense.
it changed my life. And I think that getting out of the apartment was the hardest step. It was like that first day where I'm just feeling really overwhelmed and
Especially Paris.
scared, and where am I going to go? Yeah, and the people are kind of intimidating too. It's a little, I mean, in some countries their hospitality is really there. You really sense the warmth. In some countries you don't sense it as easily until you get to know
Yeah,
them.
it's fair.
Yeah, and so I love it. I love that we have that in common.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's made up a lot. I think I'm on 42 now. I don't know what you're at.
Amazing.
Yours.
Over 70.
I can't believe it. No, I need to catch up. My goal is 50 before
No,
50, and I'm not
it's
I'm not
not a
anywhere near 50
competition.
yet. Well, I mean, no, I'm kidding. No, it's just like such a feat, and like
Yeah.
kudos to you. It's such a feat.
Well, mine became a bit of an obsession for a while because I became kind of codependent on travel.
Well, that's an interesting thought. And you and I have talked about this a bit, again, like travel through trauma, using it as a positive thing. But when is too much of a positive thing too much?
Exactly.
I think I've also used it as a crutch.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes, we can employ all of these skills that we've learned, but sometimes you go through a hard time. And I think because of my history of traveling, my first inclination is to run away.
Escape. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've definitely gotten this sort of like escapism that all of my friends and family have pointed out to me. So thank you.
Yeah. And I
Like
think it does
this
serve a
codependence.
purpose to do
Yeah,
some escapism. I think it is healthy to a certain extent to step away from the environments that are causing you harm. But I think to a certain point, like I guess where I came to that realization about my own codependency with travel is coming home and realizing I hated my life. And that was the reason why I was constantly escaping. And when I addressed those reasons, the root cause, and I started building a life that I actually love, I didn't feel the need to travel in the same way. Now I just feel this joy with it. And it's not this like, I have nothing to look forward to until my trip. It's more, I can't wait. And I have so many other things I got to do before then.
Well, I'm so excited to kind of like instill that joy into our participants. And because
Yeah.
there is such like a lead up to it, right? Like with the program, I think it is a good ease in. I think it's a very healthy way to like introduce it. And I really hope that they get the joy and just all of the positive things that you and I have gotten. So I'm very
I'm
excited about
fully
it.
confident. I've never heard of someone going to those beautiful spots, coming back and be
Beautiful.
like, I regretted it. I hated
No.
it there. I've never heard that. So I'm fully confident that they're going to heal through this journey.
Yeah.
Or at least it's going to kickstart, I think, a new
It's
way of thinking.
lifelong. I mean, you
Yes,
and I both know. I mean, it's kind of the obsession thing, or like, I want to travel forever. It's lifelong. And like, we're extremely lucky.
we really are.
And I think that that's why, you had this idea to be able to bring that to people who wouldn't necessarily have it. And I think that that was super noble because I can stand here and I can tell you about my privilege and all of the things I've traveled, but like I wish that on everyone. And in the sense of like, I wish everybody had the opportunities that we had. And so for us to try at least to bring that to as many people we can, I really hope that we're able to pass it forward and share it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I fully recognize my own privilege in being able to afford this travel. And it breaks my heart when I meet so many people, whether it's in the country or in other countries, who have never left the country, never left their state or their city. And their worldview must be so limited. And it's so heartbreaking because there's so much beauty out there, but they have been hurt so many times. And I think that there's a lot of blame and victimization at play. And it causes a lot more divide. It causes more ignorance. And in my
Yeah.
opinion, probably this is just my personal opinion, but like the two most powerful ways to reduce ignorance and heal the world is education and travel.
I
And if we can
100%
provide
agree.
that to everyone, I mean, we might
I
have
feel
actually achieved world peace.
I feel like my entire worldview changed. And funny enough, I say worldview, but like my values changed, my priorities changed, the way that I interacted with people. I feel like I have, and I don't know if I could say this, I've been a kinder person since I started traveling. I really do. I think I've been more empathetic. I think I've been more understanding. I think I've been more curious. And so I absolutely agree with you that like it's so beneficial not just for us as human beings, but for hopefully a lot of people to like understand
Agreed.
that your life is not the only life and there's plenty of other people who think differently and act differently and speak differently than you. And I think it inherently causes some sort of empathy and curiosity. And yeah, I agree with you.
Especially in this political climate in the United
Yeah.
States. I think we need more empathy, and we need to understand that people who disagree with us or who see the world differently than us is not because they're crazy. It's because they are a product of their life circumstances, just like the
Yeah.
rest of us. And if we can offer an opportunity to widen your lens,
Yeah.
and where it goes from there is not up to us. But I think that
Yeah.
opportunity is the first step in being able to open up your heart and understand
Yeah.
different people and see yourself through them. Because no matter what language they speak, what religion they follow, what
Hmm.
they look like, we're all the same. We all care about the same basic values because we're human.
Just a sack of bones, all of us.
Exactly. We're all gonna turn into dust one day.
Well, I feel like that like begs the question if you do have the resources. My advice to everyone is like just do it. And I know it's like, I don't know if I can say that with Nike with the trademark, but just do it. In the sense of I really truly believe that if especially travel, I think travel is really intimidating for a lot of people. And they're like, oh well, I'll wait till I do this or I wait till I have this amount of money. And I think if you wait until you're ready to do something, you're never gonna do it.
I agree. Especially when people say, I'll wait until I'm retired. I'm like, well, you never
Absolutely
know what's gonna
not.
happen.
But also, I think that that's a really good part of our program in the sense of like it's underserved youth, right? And so trying to get that instilled as early as possible. And you a lot of times you think you don't have the resources when you're young, but like I don't know, if you want to do it, do it. If you can make it happen, make it happen. It's worth it, and don't wait until you think that you're ready because it's never going to happen. And so if I could just like embolden everyone to take a leap, if take a leap, you don't like it, you don't like it. But at least you took a leap. At least you tried it.
You don't know what's going to happen when you say yes to the opportunity, but you do know what's going to happen when you say no. Life is
Yeah,
just going to
nothing.
continue in its
It's
cycle
gonna
of insanity.
yeah.
Nothing's going to change. And it's like, you have to take a chance on yourself. And honestly, I believe if there's a will, there's a way, because there were
Yeah.
times like I was in Italy and I only had $12 left in my bank account. So I literally
There was
ate
a time in
one slice of
Dublin.
pizza a day.
There was a time in Dublin where I didn't have a phone or a wallet or any cash
Oh
because
my
it had gotten
God.
stolen. If you can convince a stranger to give you $20 for a burner phone like I did in London. Or no, in Dublin. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we have so many stories to exchange. I had to beg for
hmm
money in Zimbabwe because their ATMs broke down and I couldn't pay for my visa. They were about to send me back to the States.
I had to beg a pedal cab to take me home because I didn't know where I was one time. Again,
Oh
no
my
phone.
gosh. I've had to hitchhike twice in Latin America. One because I was stuck in a wildfire in the middle of the jungle, and then another
Oh
because I
my
got stuck
God.
in like downpour of rain while I was in the middle of a jungle. Two different
Yeah.
countries, 2 different years,
It's just like
same
to be in the middle of
outcome.
a jungle.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
I
my
love
God.
hiking. What can I say? But
But I think
that's
that's
so
such a good
funny.
point of like, we talked about the Instagram travel. Travel is hard. Like you said, you don't go to a five-star resort. Like travel is hard. And actually, you and I have mentioned this before. Like I've gotten some trauma from traveling, because it's not easy. Like it's not. And I think that's overall very beneficial. But I think my other advice, a piece of advice would be like, be realistic about your expectations. Like you are, especially if you're a woman, like you're a woman in the world. If you're gonna solo travel, you need to be smart about it. Well, that whole 6 months in Denmark, like I did not have a phone plan. And so when I traveled, I had to print physical maps and I had to write down addresses and I had to know exactly which train I was going to go on and this and that because I didn't have any cellular data. And like I could find Wi-Fi once I got there, but like I was a woman alone in the world and you just got to be smart about it. And that was my own doing. Like I wanted to challenge myself. Okay, cool. But I think it's never going to be rainbows and butterflies like maybe some people want it to be, but it's all part of the learning process, I would say. So you get stuck
Yeah,
in a jungle, you get your phone stolen, you get, followed on the metro, you do this, you do that. And I think realizing and recognizing the reality and, I don't know, accepting it is like part of the healing journey, probably too.
it makes you more resilient. I will say that.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying those are good experiences to have, absolutely. And I think all of us have gone through it to some extent. I
Yeah.
know I have.
Yeah.
But it does make me feel so much more empowered and confident in
Yeah.
myself and in my ability to protect myself wherever I am, the more I have those kinds of experiences. And I wouldn't trade that for a thing. It sucks that it had to
Yeah.
happen in a way that maybe
Yeah.
it still feels a little traumatizing, but I've been chased through the streets in Mexico, by men, and those experiences made me doubt if I want. I
Yeah.
think having embarked on travel again is seeing that the world is more good than bad. Most people in this world do not want to hurt you. Most people are going to have your back. Like understanding the goodness of humanity in spite of those experiences is just such an empowering, beautiful place to be.
And taking care of all of our bases, even in our program of, self-defense classes. God, I hope you never need them, and you probably don't. But again, part of
Insurance.
that empowerment of the program, right? It's like well, you and I have learned a lot. A lot of people have learned a lot from traveling, and we're taking all of those things and trying to compartmentalize them into parts of our program to make you or to anyone feel the most confident that they can.